Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello, how you doing, everybody? It is Wednesday, December 30th, 2020. We're almost done with 2020. That brings us almost to the period in which we forget that it's 2021, and I don't know if anybody's still writing checks, but we'll make that mistake for you here on the air, starting on, Monday, I guess, when we announce that, what will it be at that point? January 4th, 2021, and we'll probably get that wrong for a little while, and, that's hilarious, so that's like a week's worth of shows right there. Okay, we're ready to roll on yet another show, in a manner of speaking. The time has come to do it anyway, and we won't deny you. Bill is ready. He was ready just a little bit ahead of time this morning, so good on you, Bill, for arriving early on the desk here. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Thankfully, the tweet has come through, and now we are live. This morning, this is a challenge. This morning, Kagro X, me, David Waldman, does his world-famous Tarzan yell as the countdown reaches 3 weeks until Trump leaves office. Would that I could do a Tarzan yell. Yeah, that would be something today. This is Tarzan with a cold. I'm okay, but, I have my usual morning things here. I think we really are mitigating things a little bit with the horrific-tasting Alka-Lol product. So I think I can recommend it to you if you have that issue and don't mind retching and vomiting for an hour or so every morning, then that's the product for you. Yeah, right. So it reminds me of like the side effects part of this thing. Ask your doctor if retching and vomiting every morning is right for you. It probably isn't. It depends on how aggressively I gargle with this stuff. And we're still running the experiment, and then we can put it up against plain salt water and see how that does. And I think probably a little bit less disturbing taste-wise. This does work. It does do the stuff that you need it to do, but it's difficult to sit through, is all I can say. Okay, well, let's see. We have lots to cover today. Greg Dworkin will be here with us early on to help round up the morning's activities and last night's craziness, etc. There is a lot to catch up on. Armando says that he's got a couple of questions about what's happening in the Senate today and what can be done, and has some perspective for us, possibly, if we can shoehorn it in, on the Gohmert lawsuit. I can't believe that's a real thing, but it appears to be true. We'll check in on that one. I guess, I don't know where to start today. Big COVID news of the day is that not hard to predict this one, really, honestly, but I guess we kind of laid it out there for you. Luke Letlow, the congressman-elect from Louisiana's 5th District, who had to get through a runoff, and, one of those late runoffs, and I guess actually must have won his seat sometime in early December as a result, if I recall correctly from the articles. He had to get through a final runoff, won his race in December 5th or 6th when they finally declared him the winner in one of the last races outstanding from the 2020 congressional elections. He won. He held a victory party. They wore no masks. He, at some point subsequent to this, though maybe not directly at this event, but sounds pretty likely, came down with COVID. And then, of course, let everybody know through his spokesperson, who also, by the way, contracted COVID, but apparently had to go to work that day, and announced that his new boss, who used to be the chief of staff to the previous incumbent, whose name escapes me, but was super famous or whatever, a 3-term congressman who I guess was holding himself to a 3-term term limit. And he had gone on to succeed his boss, and now he won't. He checked into the hospital. He told us all through his also sick spokesperson that he was checking in for what, precautionary purposes, and we all had questions about, how is it that you find a bed in a hospital bed shortage for precautionary self-check-in. That didn't sound right. He got transferred to another hospital facility where he went into the ICU shortly thereafter, and it's only been a couple of days since we learned that, and by now you probably have guessed, him dragging this out as much as possible, he has died from this COVID. So, I don't know. It's one of those situations where you don't know exactly what to say. People who are better at this, put on their serious face and say, well, no one should suffer this fate, and no one should. And it's a terrible situation. A young guy, 41 years old. I assume this was, I don't know whether this was a lifelong dream or not, but certainly over the past couple of years working for this congressman, when the reality hit him that he might actually be able to succeed his boss in the seat. I'm sure he was proud and ready to take over the job, but now he won't. Leaves behind a wife and two very young kids, I think 3 and just under 1 year old. What can I tell you? He was a mixed bag, too. He apparently was, with some frequency, seen wearing a mask. He wasn't an anti-masker, but he was not an enthusiastic masker. We can say that. And, he held his victory party maskless. Lots of pictures circulating of him in, crowds of moderate size without masks. Clearly, there are more aggressive anti-maskers out there, probably in his district, probably among his supporters, certainly among his would-be colleagues. But that was pretty quick. I think it was on the 11th or so that they announced that he had contracted COVID, and he didn't make it to New Year's. And it was Christmas in the hospital. So I don't know. Neither will this death convince the real loons out there that this stuff is real. I don't know what they're going to tell themselves he died of, but I don't know. Greg, have you told anybody this disease is dangerous?
I've mentioned it,
Okay.
and I think it's convinced his family. And the thing that you say is condolences to the family. That's all you can say.
Yeah, what can I tell you? Sorry it happened to him.
Don't say, oh, he deserved it, oh, they had it coming, or any of that nonsense. It's bad. When people die, it's a human death. It's bad, right? And so, it's a message, and it's a message I think that's getting more and more received by the U.S. The polls are saying that the number of people willing to get vaccinated is going up. It's up to 73% in the Kaiser Family Foundation, which I always want to call the KFF poll. I always want to call it the KFC poll.
Yes.
Have some, fried chicken with coffee in the morning.
I understand that's a cure for. I believe that is a cure. I'm going to put on Facebook that it's a cure anyway.
Right. Well, they'll be happy.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is that it's pervasive. It remains the story of 2020. And Donald Trump's handling of it, of course, is a huge story for 2020 and 2021 as we start looking back and see everything that's gone wrong.
He did not send this guy Regeneron, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So there's how shall I put this? Donald Trump tweets this morning, the federal government has distributed the vaccines to the states. Now it's up to the states to administer. Get moving, he wrote. Nicholas Grossman over at Arc Digital, the editor there, says that's a bad sign for the national vaccination program as Trump shifts from taking credit for the vaccine to blaming distribution problems on others. And we know about distribution problems.
Sure.
We've been talking about distribution issues problem. For years and years and years on this show.
Yeah.
Right? And we knew it was going to be an issue. Everybody in the world who does this for a living knew it was going to be an issue.
Yes.
And it's an issue. So I'm sending you a little picture, if I could.
How did it become an issue? I don't understand. Yeah. No one was less trustworthy with anything of importance, of course, than the Trump administration. And they did exactly what everybody thought they would, although I gather that people thought at some level that, wow, they certainly won't screw this up. They've made the vaccine. It's a real thing. All they have to do is give it to other people to inject into arms. And how hard is that? Get some trucks.
Nope. Right. I sent you a semi-funny picture that Josh Michaud sent around yesterday. It's a picture of a horse, and the back end of the horse is well drawn by an artist, and the front end of the horse looks like it was drawn by a 2-year-old. Okay? And the back end is labeled research. And you get an idea of where the scientists were involved and the professionals and where the politicians from the Trump administration were.
Yes.
So the back end of the horse is labeled research and clinical trials, clearly detailed. Regulatory review starts to get a little sketchy, as the term goes.
Yeah.
And when you get to allocation and distribution, that's the stick figure part of the picture.
Yeah.
And so the scientists and the professionals did their job, and then they gave it over to the politicians, and the politicians are screwing up. And that's basically what the message is there. Now, we were supposed to be getting about 3 million vaccines a day at this point, and what we're getting is about 1 million a week.
That is less.
So the pace at which we are going is way, way lower than it needs to be. And that's why Biden and Harris are talking about stepping up the pace. We have 15 million doses allotted. There's only 2 million that have been given. And again, Trump is blaming the states, but he never allowed the states any sort of coordinated way of doing this by stifling CDC, which is their coordinating agency, but not the responsible agency. As again, we've talked on the show many times, CDC doesn't run state public health departments any more than the Department of Education runs state education departments. What they do is provide guidance, and then the states need to do what they need to do. In this particular case, when it's an extraordinary above budget unfunded mandate thing from the feds, the states are really not in a position to do much of anything because, as Nancy Pelosi has been arguing in Congress for months now, states need local aid and state aid. And the Republicans, who are not interested in ever helping people, are not interested in giving it to states for one simple reason. Republicans would rather, it's not because they're afraid the program would fail. They're afraid that the program would succeed. What they don't want is any program that has Democratic fingerprints on it to succeed. So they'll block anything that smacks of success because that's how they roll. And I'm not exaggerating, and it's not hyperbole. There's no other reason to block this from red states. But they won't fund the money, the state organizations, the state infrastructure, when this should be infrastructure week, for state health departments. They won't fund the process that needs to be done in order to distribute this. That's especially difficult when you have vaccines like Pfizer, which have to be stored at an extremely low temperature. Now, the good news is that they won't expire for a year. So it's not like they're going to sit there and then expire. That won't happen. But what will happen is that it's going to be exceedingly slow until 3 weeks from now when Biden takes over.
Yeah. And then we'll see whether he can repair the damage that's been done. I just thinking back to the early days before the vaccine was ready for shipment. Trump was was full of ideas about how he was going to expedite.
He's going to have the military do it.
Yeah, right. I mean, they were going to be dispatched all over the place. There was going to be a vaccine.
Everybody loves the military, and I'm in charge. I'm the commander-in-chief. Right. I will get it done. I
can make it happen. Yeah. All of a sudden, right? The states should get your own militaries. States, you could call it the National Guard, but I'd be interested to see whether he would allow that. Wouldn't declare an emergency.
1% of the population's been vaccinated.
In
West Virginia, 1.9%. In Virginia, your own Virginia, only have 0.55% vaccinated. Oh. In the heavy-duty hit states, South Dakota, 1.8%. And in North Dakota, 1.7%. So it's starting.
Yeah. They are giving out.
It's starting really, 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 really slow. In Mississippi, only 0.15% of the population has been vaccinated. So what's going on here?
The same needle.
You have states that just are not set up for this, which is not a surprise because everybody saw this coming.
Yeah. And
nobody could have foreseen that this would happen. Everybody saw that this would happen, and they've been screaming about it.
Yeah, I will say. I mean, I guess you could think, well, why didn't the states? If the states saw it coming, why didn't they plan differently? But I mean, how do you plan in an atmosphere where the president of the United States, as untrustworthy as he is saying, "I'm going to have the military do it, or we're going to have this happen, or we're going to have that happen, or you'll get aid, and then they don't get aid." And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it, and then. A lot of states, of course, then they started telling them they're going to cut their allotments, and they gave them 10% of what they said they were going to give them.
Right, or they'll handle it the way they handled it early on in the pandemic with PPE. Rhode Island asked for help, and
right.
Trump sent an empty truck.
Isn't that amazing? But the truck was sent. I sent the truck. What's wrong with
I
it?
sent the truck. There's nothing on the truck.
Well, didn't say that.
Meanwhile, since we spoke,
Yes.
I think I'll lead off with the Matt Fuller quote, which I sent you, which I just thought was funny, because we spent a lot of time. Not a lot of time, but we spent some time on Monday's show talking about suspension rules.
Yes. Right.
And Matt Fuller was describing what happened because, in fact, the House did pass the $2,000 extension over $600 in terms of stimulus money that's supposed to go to Americans. And they had to do it with the suspended rules in order to expedite it and have it done as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Republicans joined Democrats and actually got the thing passed.
Yeah.
And so Matt Fuller was describing this, and he says the House barely passes the $2,000 checks bill, 275 to 134, with 231 Dems and 44 Republicans voting yes, 130 Republicans, 2 independents, and 2 Democrats voting no. Mm-hmm. Democrats needed a 2/3 majority. That's why it was a barely passed. And then he added, given the Democrats would have turned right around and passed the bill under a rule with simple majority, I'm guessing Democratic leaders wouldn't have hated the headline, Republicans block $2,000 checks legislation again, which is the headline he had ready to go for when it failed, except it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then he wrote, and on a personal note, I think I like that pre-write more. Anytime you're explaining suspension rules, he says, you're winning.
Oh.
And so we had a winning show on Monday
because
we were explaining suspension rules.
What do I win? I don't know.
Yeah. You won
winning.
$2,000.
Well,
except you can't get it past the Senate because McConnell, under pressure from Loeffler, Perdue, and a bunch of other senators who want this passed because they're worried about what the constituents think.
Well, they worried about that.
They wanted the bill passed, and McConnell said, no, okay, I'll tell you what. Since Trump wants Section 230 of the Internet laws changed, allowing for, I don't know what, from his point of view, I guess, less censorship of right-wing nutjob conspiracy theories. And since he wants the $2,000 check, we'll bundle them. We'll put them together. And so we'll put a bill up there that says, okay, you can have your $2,000, but you also have to give Trump the Section 230 piece he wants, which the Senate will never do and the House will never do. So it's a poison pill. So nothing gets done. So it's fair to say that Mitch McConnell is blocking this from happening. But the funny thing is he had to do it this way because, in fact, there's a lot of pressure on him to get this done.
Yeah, that's true. And the one thing that Kelly
could have just ignored it and said, I'm not even paying attention to this exists.
He did it with the rest of the House agenda.
Because Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are running for election next week, and they need this passed, and he won't do it.
Yep. He must not be serious about getting them elected. Or he thinks maybe everybody can be fooled right up into the last minute, and then they have 2 days to find out we didn't pass the $2,000, and that's just the last 2 days of voting.
Yeah, it's really not clear what he's thinking. This is one of those too clever by half, and it'll especially be true if it turns out they lose those elections in Georgia.
Yes.
Oh, speaking of Georgia, the full Georgia report, says reporter Brendan Key from Georgia. Fraudulent absentee ballots were identified during the audit of thousands of ballots. Cobb County elections officials got it right 99.99% of the time. In one case, a spouse mistakenly signed an otherwise valid ballot, and the person in question said, no, I actually voted. It wasn't my wife who voted. I voted, but my wife signed the ballot. Yeah. And that's it. I think there was one other case where the signature was in the wrong place. Yeah. Other than that, there was no fraudulent signatures.
Yeah, so they checked the whole thing. And, I mean, that's what Trump had been demanding. And amazingly, I mean, unless you know Trump and know what he's like, he turned right around, made no acknowledgement of that audit, and demanded that another audit start in a different county.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Sure. Right. We'll just audit every, I mean,
right. So the normal thing to do when you don't like what's going on is you don't pay attention to the fact that it happened. You just keep moving. And that's what Trump did with this audit.
Is that normal?
But Mitch McConnell couldn't do that because there was pressure from Republican senators to do something about that $2,000 bill. They did not want to look Yeah, as Armando points out, you sign the envelope, you don't sign the ballots.
Yes.
And that's part of the problem. You take the ballot out of the envelope.
You do.
And then you have the ballot and you count the ballot. And then weeks later, months later, days later, hours later, when you want to, hey, go check those signatures. Well, they're gone. They were only on the envelope. They're not on the ballot.
Yeah.
We only have the ballots. We have a paper ballot. We can tell you, yeah, well, that just proves it's fraud because you can't prove that it wasn't.
Yes, I mean they do. That was the original setup. Was I need you to match everything back, and the whole point of the secret ballot is that you don't match those things, but you check the signatures as they come in. And Georgia had retained some of these envelopes.
Any letters in the U.S. mail ever?
Me, no.
You ever get any? Do you ever keep any of the stuff that's like inside the envelope?
No.
Do you ever keep the envelope?
Yeah,
like
that is what I keep.
2 months later, if somebody says, I want you to match the envelope to the thing you got in the envelope, and if you can't, then whatever you got isn't valid.
Yeah, well, not the way mail ordinarily works.
Not the way ballots work.
No, well, certainly not ballots, but even regular mail, when you don't have any interest in necessarily in hiding the origin of the mail that you got. Who keeps the envelopes? You say that's your cousin's Christmas card, but do you have the envelope with the canceled stamp on it? No,
that means you don't love
card.
me.
Yeah, they may believe that.
Yeah, and of course, again, Armando being correct points out that part of the reason for doing that is it's a secret ballot.
Yeah,
you can't completely always match it up because that would mean you knew how people vote.
Yeah,
that obviates the whole idea of a secret ballot.
And that's why you
don't
see,
sign
I
ballot. Proved it's fraud.
Right.
Because you can never prove it's not because of the rules.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, the Trump rule, which is I demand an audit. All right, here's the audit. Here are the results. I demand another audit. No.
I demand a different audit.
Yeah. Well, he could demand the same audit over again. He hasn't acknowledged that this audit happened.
He can demand it on January 8th. I don't really care. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I hope Armando can come on and talk about how stupid Louis Gohmert is, because that's like a favorite topic of mine. But I don't have all of the information at my fingertips. I just know he's stupid.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just background radiation as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly, which helps you get tan. So it's a good thing.
Oh.
So we have that. The thing that bothers me the most, of course, right now is the fact that there are ICUs overflowing, literally overflowing. They're using gift shops and chapels to house patients while Trump is golfing.
Yes.
Doing nothing about it. So he screwed up the distribution problem for vaccines. Mm-hmm. He's doing nothing about PPE. He didn't invoke the Defense Act that would allow for diverting or concentrating manufacturing capabilities in areas that are needed. It's just, I can't wait for the grown-ups to come back and actually start working. And the thing is, when you look at the statistics for COVID right now, the hospitalizations are off the charts. The cases have dropped a little bit, but it's hard to tell whether or not that is a result of holiday counting, where if you're on holiday, you don't count. I mean, the week between Christmas and New Year's is always weird because it's like a work week, but it's not a work week. It's sort of a holiday, but not exactly a holiday. It's kind of half work. And you're not always getting the full numbers. But the hospitalizations are the most accurate of all the different numbers. As COVID Tracking Project explains, current hospitalizations remain the most reliable statistic. Hospitalizations are a much better reflection of reality than the other metrics through the holiday reporting bumpiness. So the fact that cases and deaths have dropped, you don't know whether that's just a reporting factor or whether it's a real factor.
Yeah. Speaking of the factors, as we're coordinating behind the scenes here, trying to decide when we can get Armando to come on. But I don't think we're quite ready to get around to Gohmert just yet. But,
I'm always ready. I'm always up.
All right, in that case,
once it come in at 9:30, that's fine.
Oh well, then.
So
right.
the fact is, the summary of the first half hour here, is that we have an issue with COVID. It's not under control. It's especially out of control in Southern California. Trump held up relief for it. New York Times has a nice story about Trump's veto threat did little to alter the stimulus package, just got him some attention. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's been an issue. He's doing nothing about it. And we, are frustratingly sitting here having to wait while we watch this all unfold in a horrible way until he's out. And of course, he's out on January 6th, and he's calling for a spectacular show of support from his supporters, which is scary.
Forget it.
And, that January 6th and then the 2 weeks after is going to be the scariest part of the administration as far as I'm concerned. Now, there's new polling. Democratic voters say 43-33 Biden should compromise to work with the GOP. GOP voters say 54-25 Republicans in Washington should stick to their positions. Now, that same asymmetry shows up in voter expectations. Democratic voters think Biden will compromise, but not vice versa. GOP voters don't expect either side to work together. So the point there is that that's the way it always runs, as others have pointed out. This has been true for years. This asymmetry has persisted for years and years and years. John Harwood had a tweet about that. And it's Republicans are at once more ideologically extreme, he writes, and less interested in making government work than Democrats are.
Oh.
So they want a posture, and they don't necessarily want compromise. And they're perfectly happy to have things fail. And especially, as I said at the beginning, they're especially happy to have it fail if it happens to be a Democratic initiative.
Yes, that they're very much into.
Right. John Frieden has a quote here. What happens when a vaccination program is run as a logistics program by White House appointees with zero experience? Doesn't start well.
No, I guess not. Feels like it's been run by the Coalition Provisional Authority and their 15-year-old staff. But wow. All right. Well, it's not likely to start well. We will take a 2-minute break here, and after which, I suppose, or maybe during the break, we can bring Armando in, and I don't know. It might make it smoother. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find a way to screw it up. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Hi, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I believe we've got everything up and working. Armando's here. He's got questions. Greg's here. He's got answers. I'm here. I got breakfast. So we're all good.
It's like tradition. It's like, it's a 10-year reunion.
Yeah. Okay. So what the hell's going on here? We have to stop flights until we can figure out what the hell's going on? Something?
Well, what about that, Greg?
Well, there's a story in the LA Times Armando sent along. Breakthrough finding offers clues about why certain COVID-19 patients die, especially young males. And it turns out that they develop antibodies against their own interferon, which interferes with the interferon, which means that their immune system is compromised by an autoimmune response due to COVID. And that's one of the things that people are learning about how this virus works. The other is that the amount that you initially are given, the viral load, seems to matter. And that's why spending a lot of time with people indoors for long periods of time is a lot worse than just passing them while you're running, even without a mask. If you just happen to be running and have like 8 nanoseconds contact with somebody from 50 feet away outside, that's quite different than, let's say, being indoors at a church for a big wedding, like what happened in Maine, where everybody gets exposed for a long time. So viral load and your own immune response to the virus are two important factors as to how sick you get. The best thing to do is to get not sick at all, to not get the virus. And so, of course, that's why the vaccine is such a We always talked about that. We have a toolbox, and the power tool in the toolbox is vaccine. It's always been true. It's been true for years. And it really is the way that this thing is going to be brought under control, but it's going to take a while, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, the vaccine story in particular, and of course, I guess you probably featured Trump's tweet this morning that it's not his fault.
Yep. He went from claiming credit to it's somebody else's fault. So things are not going well when that happens.
Yeah, we have 3 weeks to go. But unfortunately, it also, I guess the other thing that you might have mentioned this morning was Biden's statement yesterday that he's not getting cooperation on the transition. And I'm not sure how much of the vaccine distribution part of that is part of the problem. Probably a lot, because that has been sort of delegated to the national security apparatus. Isn't that right?
Well, I think the bigger problem is in the Defense Department. I think that the CDC is talking to Biden whatever Trump tells them. And so, that part of it I'm not so worried about. The problem is that it's being shunted to the states, and talking about it and having access to it. And he doesn't have full access. He's already said he does not have full access to what they are planning in terms of the vaccine rollout. The problem is that talking about it isn't the issue here. Sometimes when you're talking about information, NSA and CIA stuff, information is everything. This isn't information. This is the actual nitty gritty of getting this stuff out. And so even talking to people and getting information doesn't make the wheels roll, doesn't make the trucks go out full. And part of the problem is, I suspect, this is complete speculation on my part, when Biden gets in and starts doing the diagnostics of what the hell is going on, he's going to find that a lot of the distribution is politically influenced, that red states are getting more than blue states, that it's not being done in an equitable fashion. I think that's what they're hiding.
At least that, and probably some profiteering, too.
There might be.
There are at least some reports that some vaccines have been diverted to less than optimal distribution ends, including possibly being put up for sale. And then, of course, we did have the Florida experiment. Ron DeSantis can't get enough of diverting from the advice. In some cases, it turns out that he might have a point, but in other cases, as where, I think, like Lee County, they decided they're just going to give out their vaccine first come, first serve, and make everybody line up outside the clinic. And they had, they had elderly couples out there huddled in blankets overnight, camping out, hoping to get the vaccine. That can't be good.
No, it can't be good at all. In fact, I had that in the pundit roundup this morning, and it's pretty illustrative of some of the problems that are going on here. So let me just see if I can scroll up and
While you're looking for that, I can remind you that the Coronavirus Task Force Director, the Vice President of the United States, and the
President of the Senate,
who is going to name Trump the winner next week, also said in a tweet yesterday that 20 million vaccines will be administered by the end of next week, which is just false from what I'm hearing.
No, it's a complete lie.
Yeah,
it's more like 2 million than 20 million. But
I had heard
here's Rebecca Jarvis writing on this. She says, I generally abstain posting about my own personal experiences or those of my family, but when my parents are seeing what they're seeing in Southwest Florida with the vaccine rollout is a disgrace. In Lee County, Florida, where vaccines started as first come, first serve for seniors on Monday, hundreds of people in their 70s and 80s slept in lawn chairs lined up outside vaccine sites, and one family friend in her 80s went to a Lee County site at 4:30 a.m., spent hours waiting for a vaccine. Many there were not wearing masks, and she said she called it a super spreader event with so many crammed together. And after hours of waiting, she left because she felt the risk of getting the virus there was higher than the chances of getting the vaccine.
Of course. And the vaccine was definitely there.
Maybe. But the virus was definitely there.
We had
for
little
sure.
bottles. Yeah,
right?
the virus.
So seniors are being told to show up at Lee County vaccination sites with warm clothes, blankets, water, and their medications.
Jesus.
And all huddled together and without masks, too, because no doubt there were a bunch of them there saying, well, what do I need a mask for? I'm about to get cured of everything.
Right. So when you see Lee County, Florida being referred to, that's the story they're talking about.
Good job.
I mean, DeSantis has turned out. I mean, obviously he's influenced by Trump, but he is independently incompetent and evil in a way that's really unprecedented by anybody else. I mean,
if Tate Reeves and Dan Patrick in Texas close behind, but I think DeSantis is in a class of his own.
It's unbelievable. Anyway, I heard you guys talking about McConnell before, and I have some thoughts and questions, probably for both of you, but mostly for procedurally. My take is that McConnell basically just wants to throw sand up in the air until we ran out of time.
Yeah,
and obviously what he came up with in the first instance was tying it to the repeal of Section 230 and some amorphous vote fraud investigation, which who knows what that even is. But there's two things that strike me is, when does he introduce this legislation? Someone's going to object, so he's going to have to put it through cloture. And so that's going to take at least as long as what Bernie is threatening or will do today. I'm actually kind of curious what McConnell does today, because he can't get the defense bill passed until cloture. So, David, tell me, if you would, what are the procedural steps that happen today, if any?
Well, I don't know exactly what he's going to do either. But as I understand, no one has told me that he has filed his cloture petition yet on anything. So I'm a little curious whether he intends to do anything at all. I mean, like you said, there's not much clock left. You really can run it out on January 3rd, Sunday. The plan is to these congressional terms come to an end. January 3rd is as late as at noon is as late as this 116th Congress, which is considering this bill, can exist. And of course, when the Congress dissolves, they immediately resolve into the 117th Congress, minus Luke Letlow, of course. But they can make the switch over instantaneously. But all of the bills that they were considering in the 116th Congress, even if they plan to consider them again in the 117th Congress, they all die. And they technically have to start up all over again. They have to be reintroduced. Of course, you have the text, so it's not a slow process necessarily. And you can skip the committees in a situation like this. But he might just be looking to wait until, if he can hold out and not get, beat up in the halls of the Senate by anxious senators until Sunday at noon, then there's another delay built in. Now, once the pressure starts again Sunday at 1, but then there are all sorts of other activities that will take up everyone's attention. So they could push this until, the second week of January before everybody says, hey, what were we going to do about that? Where's the money? You said that everybody wanted. Lindsey Graham is now on board with the checks. Anyway, so it's an open question whether he's even going to try to do anything. If he wanted to get, say, even the defense bill passed, he could file for, make a motion to proceed to the consideration of the veto override, which could be filibustered. And you could file for cloture, but doing that, just once again to remind everybody of the stupid rules surrounding cloture. If you filed for cloture today, Wednesday, there's, of course, the process of waiting for the cloture petition to ripen, as they say, for a vote. So if you file it on a Wednesday, an entire calendar day has to come and go in between the day in which you file for cloture and the day in which you're first allowed to vote on the question of cloture. Again, just cloture.
But they
not
don't
the
work on
underlying thing.
Fridays.
Well, usually not. And that'll be New Year's Eve, and they won't want to.
Work on Mondays.
Yeah, and on Monday at noon they won't.
Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or the country's screwed. That's
pretty much it. That's normally the way things work. And then, at the end of a session, they do crazy things, and you will sometimes see with cloture, cloture filed on a Wednesday, and then the intervening Thursday happens, and then on Friday morning at 12:01 a.m. they'll hold their cloture vote. And sometimes you'll even see cloture filed on both the motion and the underlying bill both at once to try and save as much time as possible. But if you actually filibuster the motion to proceed to the bill override, and you do all of this, and you vote at 12:01 a.m. on Friday, there's still post-cloture time that you have to print. There's 30 hours in the rules for post-cloture debate, which means that all of Friday has to expire and a good chunk of Saturday has to expire before you can even have your cloture vote, at which point you are now on the motion to proceed to consideration of the override. You have to pass that motion after you've invoked cloture on it, and then you can begin debate on the veto override, which itself can also be filibustered, on which you'll need to file cloture and wait for an intervening day, and then invoke cloture, and then wait 30 hours, and then vote. So they really could run out the clock and not do either one of these things. So that leaves McConnell in the position of having to shop around for, ironically enough, a unanimous consent agreement.
I was going to say, suspend the rules.
Yeah. So if he can get, and so this is
you
what
don't like
Bernie
the rules,
Sanders and others
change
are
them. You
holding
can't
out
change
for.
the rules, suspend them. You can't do that. Bang your shoe on the table.
Yeah. So this puts Bernie in the position of being able to say, I will agree, if you will agree that we'll have a clean up or down vote on $2,000 checks and nothing else, I'll get out of the way, and we'll all agree to suspend the 30 hours post-cloture. We won't even force you to have the cloture vote. We'll just say, let's all unanimously agree to consider the NDAA override, and we'll all cast our votes, and then we can move on to the checks. But McConnell so far hasn't agreed to do it, and I think he might just be thinking, maybe if I let time expire on both of these bills, then we can hit the Democrats for getting in the way of defense authorization. They'll point to the checks, and we'll point to the defense thing, and we'll see how the chips fall.
Yeah, but we got this Georgia
one
election that's screwing everything up in terms of McConnell's thinking.
Yeah. Well, right.
Well, no, you wouldn't even hear about the 2000 if it wasn't for Georgia. I mean, Trump notwithstanding. I mean, he would have ignored Trump. This is about the January 5th election, in my opinion.
1,000%.
So here's the thing, though. They want this defense bill. I mean, that's a lot of cheddar for their lobbyists and campaign contributors.
Yeah. But they can do it later.
Yeah, so you just told me now that, in fact, Bernie could stop it from passing at all because there's a second filibuster point that he could run the clock out on as well.
Yeah.
Just independently of anything else. And Markey, of course, would also do it. The thing that's interesting to me is the other part. I mean, McConnell sort of said something, and someone just says there's some bill out there, and I sort of looked at it, but it doesn't look like much. He's got to introduce it.
Oh, yes, right.
What is he going to do? Ask for unanimous consent on that? Cornyn's going to object. He doesn't want to give the $2,000, supposedly. So that doesn't get through. And that actually just playing the politics out. And Greg, tell me if you agree with me on this one. I think this is now where Bernie and Markey and those guys are very valuable to it because, all the Democrats can agree, okay, we agree to that bill. And Bernie can say, I don't. and I'm not giving you unanimous consent, and I'm going to filibuster.
I would completely agree, except for I just don't know how it plays in Georgia. I don't want headlines saying Bernie holds up soldier pay.
Well, not that one so much as I'm thinking about the $2,000 thing, because right now I still think the $2,000 play is very helpful to us because Trump, I don't think he cares, but he's still periodically tweeting, give him the $2,000.
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete shaft and a stab in the back to Republicans. And in fact, at the time that he said, no, I want $2,000, I immediately started tweeting out that picture of Nancy Pelosi in sunglasses, because, this is a gift. I can't believe he did this.
She played it perfectly well. She played it perfectly. Schumer kind of screwed it up in the beginning, but then he got on board. But, she really turned that to our political advantage.
8 minutes after he said it, okay, we're ready. We'll pass it like in the first thing in the morning.
Right.
And
So-
that's exactly the right thing to do. By the way, Georgia early voting has already crossed 2.5 million.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of votes, but I remember early votes in Florida, so I'm always skeptical of all that. I think the key,
I don't think it means anything in terms of predicting the winner. I'm saying a lot of people are voting.
right. So the thing that
Those
I
voters,
think
that's in the bank. Those voters that have voted, they don't care what happens now.
I mean, maybe I'm on an island, but I actually think Georgia's going to be determined by what Trump does on January 4th when he goes there. That's
Biden Harris are going there too.
Yeah, I saw that, but I still think if Trump tells people it's rigged and Republicans stink, I mean he's going to depress turnout by.
He can destroy Republicans' chances if he doesn't say that and plays by the rules like he did the last time. I don't know that it really changes anything.
Yeah, but
so he can hurt. I don't know if he can help, but he can certainly hurt.
Well, hurting them helps us. I mean,
yes.
it's zero.
Yes. I want him to go down there and hurt Republicans. I don't think he'll do that. I think he'll go there and do his usual shtick, and then you'll already have 5% of Republicans saying, I know what he said, wink, wink, but what he really means is let's stay home.
Right. I mean, well, that's sort of what I'm hoping for. But let me just play that whole scenario out. How do you keep Trump happy? You repeal Section 230 or whatever, and you say we'll have a commission on vote fraud or whatever the heck they want to do.
Yeah, blue ribbon.
And the 2000, which is why McConnell put those three things together. I know everyone's calling it a poison pill. I don't know why it is. I mean, I'm not worried about any stupid commission. 230, look, I think people... That's great for big companies that don't want to get sued.
Yeah, I'm not clear how bad that is.
It isn't.
Okay.
It is. I think people look, you have the same protections as a publisher in real life that you do online. Just because
but before Armando says another word, people should know he's actually a subject matter expert on this.
I am. And the thing about it is the Section 230 is great for online companies that get sued because it's an easy first motion. Hey, I'm not a publisher, get me out. But there's 8 million other defenses that exist for that. I mean, newspapers print letter. As you said, subject matter. When I represented a newspaper about 20 years ago, we got sued because of something that was printed in a letter to the editor.
Okay.
And we said, hey, you can't sue me for that. It's a letter to the editor. I didn't say it was true. It's clearly Marcus' opinion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You could just do the same thing, and we wanted a motion to dismiss. My point is, I didn't need Section 230. And Section 230 is nice for Twitter, but especially for Parler and Jim Hoft of Gateway Pundit and all these other people that just out and out print lies.
Yeah.
I mean, all it means is, you got to be more careful in what you publish or what you allow to be published. It's going to call for more moderation. And isn't that what we're saying they should be doing now, like Twitter and Facebook, that we're tired of you not moderating all the falsehoods that are published on your site?
Yeah.
It's Section 230.
Yep. It's funny because your new handle is going to be Armando LTE, which is a letter to the editor. And everybody's going to have that. Everybody's going to have that added. Dan from Connecticut LTE, and then
I'm already an LLC, so I got it's easy to change
LLC
LTE.
writes the LTE. It's very good. So I'm just thinking about the politics of you've explained the procedure to me. So I guess when McConnell puts both up and files for cloture on both. He might not even file for cloture on the 2000s. He may ask for unanimous consent and tell his Republicans to stay quiet. Let the Democrats object to it. Democrats shouldn't object to it, in my opinion. The problem then becomes it has to go back to the House.
Yes,
it's a different bill.
True.
But by the time it gets there, the politics of what happened in the Senate's already established.
Yes,
well,
that's the point.
They passed the 2000, they passed the 230. I mean, that's actually a pretty good play for McConnell in that sense, if he can keep those people on side. Again, I thought you still use Bertie and Markey, but you think that's still going to look bad for us. I would.
Well, if McConnell pulls that and gets it passed and sends it over to the House and the House kills it, that doesn't look good for us.
No, it doesn't. But that would still take, if you've got a Bernie and a Markey saying, I don't care what Schumer says, I object. And then they object on the motion to proceed 2 days later, you basically ran them out of time. And you can argue politically that McConnell blocked it because the $2,000 would have passed easily, yada, yada, yada. So you can still play that game. That's just, to me, how to play the politics of it.
Right. You have to block it in the Senate. You can't allow it to go to the House.
Look, I mean, I know it's hard for people to deal with, but Mitch McConnell's never going to approve $2,000 payments.
Right.
He's just not going to. So you have to think of this politically and how to play it politically, and what helps us in Georgia. Why? Because Georgia is how we'll get the $2,000. Because if we win them both, President Biden with the two houses of Congress, you put it in some type of reconciliation bill if necessary, or you just dare these people again to vote against 2,000. Maybe you get 60. You probably can. There's enough people now on the record who say they just wanted the 2,000. They don't care about repealing Section 230. They don't want Section 230 repealed. They're the big tech lobbyists will be out in force to stop that. So the way to get the 2,000 is to win Georgia. So to me, everything I think about on this, and I think that's how Pelosi thought about it, and I think she was right.
I think everybody thinks about it this way. Georgia's been the center of the political universe for a month, and this just dots the I's and crosses the T's.
Right. So really, I know it's weird, and we have a bad media, so you got to be careful about it. That's my concern on how to play it. And we're down to the last stretch, and at the end of the day, also, how do you get Trump to be mad about it so that he's hurts them on January 4th? That's still an issue, and that relates to a new thing that's come up in this Gohmert suit that I've been tweeting about a little bit. The judge in the case was filed in Tyler, Texas, in federal court, by the way, and it has been drawn by a Trump appointee, but apparently it's a guy who's a qualified and not some crazy person. Probably crazy, but you know what I mean? More of a standard Federalist Society type.
But he accepted the case. Why did he accept the case?
Well, because it's not a question of accepting the case. I mean, someone files a case. Generally speaking, just so you know, the normal process is there's 21 days to answer. But Gohmert and those lawyers, these are, by the way, the same lawyers who filed the same lawsuit in D.C., except they also sued the Electoral College there. Yes. And that judge stymied them by saying, okay, I'll schedule a hearing after you serve everybody. And the secret is you can't serve the Electoral College because it doesn't actually exist. It's just a phrase we use for the selection of electors. It's not there is no Electoral College per se. There's electors at states that gather on the same day at their state capitals,
states,
and elect president on behalf of the state. No, there is no.
They couldn't serve the Electoral College, so they did the College of Cardinals instead. Same thing.
Exactly, but you see with that, he didn't want to deal with it. So he said, "Listen, come back to me when you've served everybody." He knows
you have to.
That they can't serve everybody. Well, you could actually proceed against everybody else.
Yes, that's true.
Who's not served, but the
point being, said, "I know. We'll get McDonald's to do it. They've served $3 billion."
$3 billion. Well, in the Gohmert suit, the judge did something interesting, and again, I've been thinking about Pence's got a predicament because for some reason these people, and Trump tweeted it once, but he hasn't again. So I don't know if someone told him to stop and he accepted it. But that it's all in Mike Pence's hands because he gets to pick the president.
Yes.
And, of course, that's ridiculous. And I explained on Twitter. But if you want a quick explanation, 12th Amendment doesn't give the president of the Senate any power at all. He's commanded to open the certificates, and then they shall be counted. There's no – I mean, I actually agree that
well, they're trying to get him not to open them.
Well, he can't. I mean, it says right? Shall.
You have to open all of them except for the 6 states that are contested.
Well,
in which case we win. Right? That's one of the arguments, which is stupid, but that's one of the arguments.
Yeah, I did. If they have to do 6 to do that. Remember, they've sued about 4, and then somehow Nevada was reincorporated into it in Arizona now too. Even though
that's because they're part of New California.
Yeah, there's no actual.
There's also a party to the suit, New California.
Just so you know, just for the state of play, there's no ongoing challenge to Georgia's electoral votes for the Trump campaign right now. There's no ongoing challenge to the electoral votes of Nevada right now. There's no ongoing legal challenge to the electoral votes in Arizona. And there's no ongoing legal challenge to Michigan. None of those are in dispute right now as a legal matter. All right. There is 2 cases. Pennsylvania, Trump filed in last week a cert petition challenging Supreme Court rulings, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania rulings, and now they just took an appeal on the Wisconsin Supreme Court case that was decided last week. So they, in theory, have 2 challenges going on. They've actually abandoned their federal challenges. Not officially, they have 90 days, but obviously they're not going to keep waiting. But they did not seek a cert petition of the Third Circuit decision or the Seventh Circuit decision that went directly against Trump. Remember, Rudy always say he wanted to get to the Supreme Court. Well, he had a lot of chances and never did actually go to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So there you go. But here's what's interesting about the Gohmert case. So now Pence has been ordered to respond by tomorrow at 5.
Okay. We do have
tomorrow's New Year's Eve at 5. And what he responds and who responds is going to be pretty interesting. Now, he's sued in his official capacity.
Yes.
Yeah,
we do have our break coming, but we got 30 seconds to tease the next side.
I'll leave, but you'll stay and you'll continue. Great stuff. Really interesting.
Thank you for staying,
I'll
Greg.
see you tomorrow, and, have fun.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll finish the story on the other side.
All right, so we'll tease that for the other side. We only have the 1-minute break. We'll regroup and come back, and we'll find out why Gohmert is an idiot in half an hour or less. Fun. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yes, so let's see. We were on the Gohmert suit and also straightening everything else out. There were 2 cases in Wisconsin, one of which was in federal court in Wisconsin and ended in a Trump loss in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. That's not being appealed to the Supreme Court. And there was a Wisconsin State Supreme Court case, which is being appealed. Some similarities between the 2 cases, but that's not. The Wisconsin thing isn't Gohmert. Gohmert is a completely separate and equally stupid for another reason.
It's much stupider. It is to me. It is now officially the dumbest lawsuit in the thing, and that's saying something because I think it's dumber than Sidney Wood's lawsuit.
You combine the 2 of them, the Sidney Powell, Lynn Woods. So, but you said Sidney Woods, which is fine as a conglomerate. They work together very well.
You knew who I meant.
Yes,
the crack people.
Yeah, both people. Okay.
Yes,
I think
they're both great, and they still have their stupid lawsuits going on. But they have no standing to do anything. It really, as I've said all along, Trump is the guy who always had standing, and he just didn't do anything. But be that as it may, the cases he's now brought 2 challenging state Supreme Court decisions to the Supreme Court, which, by the way, if he wins them both, wouldn't change the outcome of the election. So it's almost weird that they're even doing that and not doing it with others. So I don't even know.
They're banking on Gohmert.
I don't know if I get to say this on the air, but this shows you how half-assed Rudy is.
I think that's a fair thing to say.
He doesn't even follow through on anything.
Yeah, you pointed out the other day. I mean, he's all mouth on Twitter, but he is sitting on his ass at Mar-a-Lago, hanging out in Florida.
He
filing
doesn't do
nothing.
any actual lawyer things.
No.
I mean, for what Sidney Powell Wood, Lynn Wood, they at least file lawsuits.
Yeah. Well,
he doesn't do
Gohmert
anything.
managed to file
Anyway,
a lawsuit.
to get back to the Goldberg thing, which is, I don't know if you guys talked about the Pence card at any point in time.
We have, I think, but yeah. So the basics of it is he thinks Gohmert's theory is that the 12th Amendment empowers Pence to rule however he wants on the 6th, on January 6th, and just say this state doesn't count, that state doesn't count, I'm not opening it, or he could, throw it to the bodies to break up and decide which one of the. This is also about the so-called alternative slates of electors. Which does bring Arizona back into it, actually, because Arizona is remarkable. I discovered in reading it through yesterday, not the Gohmert suit, but other articles. That's the wildest state we've got. There are two different so-called alternative slates of Republican electors being offered, which is amazing. There's in a couple of states, the people who were essentially running for election to the Electoral College as official Trump electors, but lost in Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, etc. They just basically held their own wildcat meeting of what they said was the Electoral College and quote unquote cast their votes and then sent that to Pence and thought maybe he'll open those up and either read those incorrectly or read ours side by side with the real one and say, I don't know which one is which. Let's decide. And then we can at least roll the dice. But our Arizona actually not only did that, but also had a totally random group of Republicans responsible and connected to no one get together somewhere and declare themselves to be electors. They weren't even actually designated by the Trump campaign as electors for the general election. They just said, we're 11 Republicans who now declare ourselves electors, and they sent that in too. So there may be 3 certificates in circulation. I don't know I still don't know how any of them that aren't official get into Pence's hands, except by perhaps Gohmert waving it around on the floor and saying, will you take this up there with you and count that alongside the official one that you've got? But if they manage to do that, Arizona will have 3 of them to decide between.
Well, just so you know, you can look at 3 U.S.C. Section 6 as to which certificates get delivered to the houses.
Real laws about what to do.
They come from the National Archives. So you can actually look at the certificates. And now they're all in. New Hampshire, for strange reasons, was late. Yes. But they didn't impact the validity. Though you could actually be late on that. There's no safe harbor issue there. Mm-hmm. It's just someone had to call New Hampshire up and say, hey, we haven't got your certificate yet. That's
also actually in the law that 2 weeks before the date set for counting in the joint session, if your certificates aren't there, the law actually says you got to call and ask after those certificates. Or if they said, well, we sent them, I don't know what happened to them, you got to call the archives or the local federal judge who's supposed to have a copy too.
Yep.
And say, somebody's got to send me one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so they have all these backstops for the certified results. But at any rate, they're all there now, and you can look at all 50.
Congratulations. Yeah.
And on the first day of the new Congress, which is January 3rd, the archivist delivers to both houses the certificates. Those are the certificates that are opened.
Okay.
By the president of the Senate. He doesn't get to decide some other certificates. His choice of opening are those.
Yeah, right? I thought that they got a separate copy, that the archivists get a copy, and then you're supposed to send a copy addressed to the president of the Senate at the Capitol. And I figured that the ones that were sent to the Capitol are the ones that are opened.
No, actually, you don't. No, you do. The president of the Senate. Yeah, it's a little confusing, but the certificates, according to the Electoral Count Act, that are delivered to the houses, and those are the ones that are counted. Come from the National Archivist.
Okay.
And are delivered. It's right there in 3 U.S.C. Section 6. Those are the ones that are counted and they're not counted by the President of the Senate, by the way. You can just read
No.
the 12th Amendment. It says that the President and Senate shall open the certificates,
Yes.
and those certificates shall be counted. Those certificates shall be counted.
Yeah. They get counted
That's
by
what
the
the 12th
tellers.
Amendment says. And it doesn't say Pence counts them. It's the institutions count them. And that's why in the law, as you've mentioned before, both the House and the Senate designate 2 tellers to do the counting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who are those tellers is a great question. I'm surprised the Trump world hasn't come up with that the teller has the power to reject.
Yeah. And in a way, they might have some power, and there's a scripted announcement that we've talked about a couple of times on the air that they're supposed to make. Normally, you open it up, and then the tellers are the ones responsible for not only the counting but announcing to the joint session that this is the real certificate that I have in my hands, and here's what it says.
Exactly, and it says X.
Right. So they could, presumably there's an opportunity anyway, for a teller to say, hey, this doesn't look like the right certificate. This looks false to me.
Right.
They've never
or
done that.
This certificate I know was derived from an unlawful election, and
right.
Therefore it is
or
not
there's
properly
3 of
certified.
them, and I don't know
you
what to
can
do.
say those words.
Yeah. I don't know if it has any effect.
I don't know.
Right. But it will be fun and interesting.
Shouldn't they be arguing for McCarthy to name Mo Brooks or
Gohmert
Gohmert as
a
the teller?
Yes, but I don't know if they know that. Or maybe they tried it and McConnell was like, I don't even want to talk to you.
A fake Trumpster account to come up with all these things. So I have better ideas than they do.
Yeah, right. To troll them and to say, a lot of people think that's what Lin Wood is doing. Actually, he's so crazy. There's a lot of Republicans that are sure that he's a Democratic plant, which is amazing.
Think about that.
Hey, maybe, I don't know.
Think how big he became. And what does that tell you about your people? That you could be
yeah, that's true.
Trolled. But anyway, the tellers do the announcements, as you said, right? And they deliver it. So
and then the counting.
Why aren't they yelling at McCarthy to name Gohmert or Mo Brooks?
I don't know, and I don't know whether they know anything about it. I don't know whether they know whether they want to be on the floor, or maybe they've quietly lobbied for receptive tellers, but Mo Brooks says, I don't want to be the teller, I want to be the one on the floor objecting, but you should make Louis Gohmert a teller, or you should make someone else the teller. Now,
or Biggs, they've got 8 million crazy people.
Yeah.
They'd all jump at the chance, but they didn't think of that.
I guess not.
What's left? Okay, so that happens, and he says, are there any objections? And you've seen this before. It happened with Biden, with Representative Jalea Paul most recently, where she objected to something or other. I forget which state. But Biden asked, well, no argument. Basically shut her down and said, no arguments. It should be in writing and signed by a senator. Do you have that? No? All right, then sit down. Yeah. Biden was pretty firm, and we saw Gore do it himself. And in 2004 was the only time the chambers had to break because Boxer signed one of the objections. And again, I think that was illegal in the sense that it violated the 3 U.S.C. 5 for sure. But I also think 3 U.S.C. 15 is unconstitutional, but not for the reason Gohmert thinks everybody cares. There's no provision for objection by the houses of Congress, is my point on that. That's not what the 12th Amendment says. You could, I guess, argue that the counting process implies that I can object to it, but I don't think that's true. Of course, just to put you on a timeline, the original Constitution provided for 2 votes for Electoral College, and all of that, and then they would be counted in 1800. And by the way, 1800 is important to the Trumpsters because Thomas Jefferson accepted the Georgia electoral votes, even though they had some procedural defect. They weren't certified properly or something. And he said, no, they're fine. But nobody objected. So, and it really, at the end of the day, it didn't actually help them because At the time, Jefferson and Burr were sort of running mates. Burr was sort of running for vice president, and usually they tried to plan it so that the vice president has a second amount. That was sort of the plan, but somehow they screwed it up, and they came out even. And that's when it got thrown to the House.
Right.
And Jefferson won when Hamilton flipped New York and a couple of others because he hated John Adams and Burr as well. But it really isn't much of a precedent at all because there was no doubt who Georgia had selected. In fact, I think Georgia did have an election that year. So a lot of states did not. A lot of them just had the legislatures pick. Okay. But at any rate, that's not much of an example. So what's left? 3 USC Section 15 is unconstitutional in my view because there's no provision in the 12th Amendment for objection by members of the bodies. I mean, I feel like you could object to the count. Like someone said, no, 2 + 2 does not equal 4 or something like that. It actually equals 5.
There has to be some provision.
And you can take a vote on the count itself, but I don't think you get to object to the electors submitted, consistent with the 12th Amendment. All right, nobody cares about that because that's not the issue today. Someday it might be, like if there were Republicans control the House in 2024, and they said no, we're rejecting the Biden reelected electors. Yeah. And we're naming Trump back as president. I mean, that's the problem to me with 3 U.S.C. 15. That can't be allowed. I mean, there's got to be something wrong with that. Anyway, but this is even worse. What Gohmert is talking about. Gohmert says that the power the President Senate has to follow the 12th Amendment, which says he shall open the certificates, because that's all it says he does, and he presides.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any actual power, in my view. Otherwise, that's all he does. And in fact, if there's a dispute under 3 U.S.C. 15, all he says is you two bodies go deliberate. I guess he might have a tie-breaking vote in the Senate if they broke up, but he has no. The president of the Senate doesn't have any special power at this joint session of Congress. Yeah, he just sort of presides.
Yeah, and there's even a question of whether there's any powers residing in the joint session at all. There's no votes. There's no voting mechanism. There's no mechanism for even posing a question, really. I guess we were saying, maybe the objections aren't even apt because,
I think they're not. I think it's a clear violation of the 12th Amendment. I mean, look, it's not a long section. You can look at it yourself.
Okay.
It doesn't say, and it will be presented for approval. It doesn't say those words. It says, here are the electors, here's their votes, count them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? That's how it says. So, but Gohmert says that because the President of the Senate presides over the session, he gets to decide what electors count.
I guess he thinks that's inherent in presiding, but
that's just kooky. Now what happens? This judge in the Gohmert case in Texas, unlike the one in D.C. who punted it by saying serve the Electoral College, knowing they never could, right? Mm-hmm. And so this case provides a vehicle for someone actually responding to that. And this judge ordered the defendant, in this case, the defendant is Michael Pence, the Vice President of the United States, in his official capacity to be he's the defendant on this. Now, two wrinkles come up there. A, they had to give a statement saying they tried to, apparently to motion to expedite it, to try to get agreement on it with Pence. Mm-hmm. They said they couldn't get an agreement. Now, I don't know that means as much as some people think. I don't think he's saying, no, I disagree with your interpretation. The guy said, you know what? I'm not getting involved. Just leave me alone. Go do whatever the hell you want to do, is more my take on it. But now the judge is going to has issued an order saying that tomorrow by 5 p.m., Pence, in his official capacity as VP, has to respond. And it's important that it's in his official capacity because, generally speaking, when a federal officer, such as the president, the vice president, a cabinet secretary, whenever that happens, the Department of Justice generally represents, right? Because it's a governmental role. So the DOJ and who at the DOJ will do this is a good question. Generally speaking, it runs out of the civil division of the Department of Justice, and they'll assign a career DOJ attorney to answer these things in general. Yeah, obviously you can run it from the top depending on how important the case is, and in theory the AG could dictate what the response is going to be, right? So what's interesting here is that what you're going to hear Friday at 5 could be the official position of the Trump administration on the question of the Pence card. Mm-hmm. So there's two interesting things. Hey, what do they say?
Yes.
Number one, they could take it very narrowly and just say he has no standing to sue, which he doesn't, by the way. He's trying to enforce Mike Pence's right. Who are you to step up for Mike Pence? And you're suing Mike Pence to enforce Mike Pence's right.
Yes,
it doesn't even make sense as a lawsuit. Mike Pence is the one. And by the way, the third thing is that if Mike Pence has the power you say he does, he can accept these fraudulent electors if he wants.
Yeah. I mean,
right, at the end of the day, if Gomer wins, of course he won't, but play it out. If Gomer wins, it basically says Mike Pence can accept those electors, and there's nothing anybody can say about it.
You mean the fake ones?
Yeah, or the real ones.
Well, yeah, either one, I guess. It provided the fake ones even make it to. I'm still puzzled as to how anybody thinks he's going to get these things.
I don't think that they do get presented. Remember, when there's been competing slates of electors, there really happened twice in two different. The famous one, of course, is 1876, right? And what happened in 1876 is different state officials submitted their own slates. Like the governor would submit one, and then an attorney general would submit another. And this happened in like 4 states, right? And, there was no real resolution. They passed a law, actually, the Congress did, to figure out what they were going to do. And they made that commission, right? But basically the deal was already fixed at that point. Okay. They had agreed to back off the Reconstruction, and it was all over before the commission even voted.
All right. Yeah, that's what they were hoping for originally in this election, in pushing for state legislatures to name Trump's electors as the official electors and to send some sort of resolution of the legislature declaring that to be the case. And then that possibly could have ended up in Pence's hands. And
right. Well, no, it's at least. Well, then yes, then the case is ripe, because then 3 USC 15, which has a whole process of which certificate wins. And by the way, at the end of the day, the certificate that wins is the governor's by that rule. But who would, is that justiciable? What if they said, I don't care what the law says, we're voting Trump president?
Right.
At the end of the day, that becomes an auto golpe coup without a military. But it's not even in play here, that part. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the other time that there was an issue on electors was in 1960. You probably talked about this before. The initial certification was for Nixon, but there was a court case and there was a recount ordered, and Kennedy won the recount, and the same governor issued a new certification, which, in my view, superseded the original certification. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there was an issue. And Nixon
they're a good faith effort to validate the recount.
Okay, but right. This goes to your question of what certificates are delivered.
Yeah.
Well, both certificates were delivered.
That seems
by the governor, and they both properly carried the seal of Hawaii. Now, there was one that was later in time, so it should have been pretty obvious which one should have. So if you're going to just, adjudicate that. Now, of course, it didn't matter because Nixon wouldn't have won if Hawaii had been flipped. So it was academic. It was an academic question at all. And there was no objections to what Nixon did. I guess Nixon made the choice, if you want to put it that way. But again, as a precedent in this process, it's pretty weak tea at best. And there was no objection, and they both at least were properly sealed certificates from the governor of Hawaii. You don't have that here, like the alternate electors that you're talking about in Arizona, and they did it in other states too. Those don't carry the seal of the state. I mean, not properly. I guess maybe they stole a seal.
In Arizona, they forged a seal.
Well, see, that's a crime.
Yes, that's a problem. I got an article to share on that one. I'll just put it in the roundup today. I don't know if it pays to read it, but the long and short of it is that the second fake the second fake electors group somehow, I guess, mocked up what was meant to look like a seal. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's the real seal. It's not raised or anything. I think they just scanned a document with a seal on it and photoshopped something together. And yeah, they probably will get in legal trouble for that. But
well, they should. I mean,
there's a point.
It's falsifying official documents.
Yeah,
I gotta believe it's got to be a crime. Otherwise, I'm going to go start falsifying stuff in Arizona and say, look, you take it to a bank. I got a seal. This is a check from the state of Arizona for $10 billion. Cash it, please.
Yeah, right. Why not? If it's not a crime. Plus, they mailed it, so that'll be fun too.
Well, okay, so they mailed it. Now, look, I think that looking at the National Archives site is pretty important here because this isn't a constitutional argument. It's a statutory argument. But the way the statute is written, I think it's implied that the certificate recognized by the National Archive is the official one, if you want to get technical about it. But again, there's a whole 3 U.S.C. 15 is actually one of the worst written laws you'll ever see, but you can eventually follow it. It's contradictory because it says you have to accept 3 U.S.C. 5, but you don't have to because if both houses agree not to, then they don't. So there's nothing conclusive or anything if that's the case. So there you go. It's going to be, in my opinion, the one certificate, and the argument for Pence now is with the one you articulated before, which is that he says no to those 6 states, and that gives Trump a 232, I think, to 224, no, 227, 232, 227, something along those lines.
Okay.
Win. But then again, you have to say were those electors appointed, and is that a majority? So that backstop also helps Trump in that then the House picks, and it's 26-24, the delegations there. It's not going to come to that. I think what's going to be interesting after telling you all the story is what does the Department of Justice put in on behalf of Pence tomorrow at 5? Oh, by the way, Judge has got a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Guess what he did? He told Gohmert's lawyers they have to have their reply in by 9 a.m. on New Year's Day.
Okay.
So they get the fun New Year's Eve activity of writing a reply brief.
Right. Good chance they'll be hit by celebratory gunfire while they're working on it too.
So what happens? I guess that judge probably knows what he's going to do. The easy out is to deny on standing. But I do think there's a possibility he wants to get Pence off the hook and basically say Gohmert is wrong about the 12th Amendment. And that way, Pence won't be blamed on January 6th for not playing the Pence card.
Yeah, I guess that'll be interesting to see whether, I mean, I don't know whether Trump or anyone working for Trump still, and remember, Bill Barr has left, is tracking this closely enough to be able to be on the other end of the phone if someone tells Trump, call and order the Justice Department to, stand up for Gohmert somehow and try and force Pence's hand in all of this. Apparently, there are some reports in Politico and others that Gohmert has as much as come out and said that the reason they ended up filing the suit was that they actually tried to meet with Pence and get him to agree to his scheme ahead of time. And he didn't say exactly what Pence said to that, but then he said, I did then go and file the lawsuit to try to force it. So the natural conclusion is Pence said, no way. And now they're going to try and sue him into it. We'll see if that works. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. And send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, as we continue on the subject, I was talking to Armando during the break. We should bring everybody else up to speed. There is a Politico article that reports, the headline is, Pence declined to back Gohmert-led effort to upend election, lawyers indicate. And I guess the quickest way to get through this is to say, what appears to have happened here is that Gohmert at some point reportedly says that they approached Pence and asked him essentially to sign on with this scheme ahead of time, which would be a good plan, to ask the vice president, will you do this? And that Pence, I don't know if the article actually has any sort of quote or paraphrase, but apparently Pence declined, at least to Gohmert's satisfaction, to say that he would go along with such a thing, and that's why Gohmert went ahead with the lawsuit. Now, Gohmert could have said that earlier, but apparently he's sort of been forced into say, I don't know, maybe he wanted to disguise the fact that he got turned down by Pence just for the PR value of leaving it, as a possibility that Pence was on board. But I guess in his motion to get the court to expedite the proceedings, the judge said, well, did you even have an injury here or what? How do you know you're not going to get what you want out of Pence? And I guess he had to demonstrate, I asked Pence if he would do it, and he said, no, that's why I have to sue. And,
well, I think it goes back to my original point, though, that if that's the case, suppose Pence doesn't agree, and he uses his plenary power to follow the statute. Your argument says he gets to do that.
That is problematic. Which is, I guess, maybe that brings us back to the question from the other day, which was, should Gohmert be suing for declaratory judgment about the interpretation of the 12th Amendment now, or suing for a writ of mandamus to force Pence to rule a certain way? But I guess if he wanted mandamus, the judge would probably say, you have to wait until you're injured and then come back. So we'll see on the 7th.
I have no idea why they filed this suit, actually. It doesn't really
it's hard to tell.
Go anywhere. But it will be, to me, it's almost like a chance to get Pence off the hook if the judge goes and says, no, the 12th Amendment doesn't say what you say it says.
Well, maybe
Pence gets off the hook. So you know what I'm saying?
Gohmert would never believe that he was wrong about the 12th Amendment. I assume that he was suing in the belief that a judge would say, of course you're right about the 12th Amendment. Yes, Pence, you do have this power. And then Gohmert could say, all right, now the judge says Pence can do this. So Pence, if you decide not to, it's all on you, and that makes you anti-Trump. What are you going to do?
Well, yeah, that's the problem.
That's what I was hoping for.
If
yes.
the judge says he can do it, which listen, I guess anything is possible. By the way, Pence also,
Right,
Gomer
sure.
also wants a decision by Monday, so if he loses, he can take an appeal.
Okay, sure. And I'd also like to join my other suit before the court. I want them to decide once and for all, quienes más macho. We have to actually get a settlement to that question after all. And I believe that the Constitution dictates the outcome on that one. So just add anything you want. Not only do I want a decision that's completely out of keeping with anybody's interpretation of the Constitution over 200 plus years, but let me have it by Monday. Okay. Sure. So anything else you could add to the wish list on this? Any other questions you could throw in there?
I mean, yeah, I know. The funny thing about it is Rudy is so bad. He never. I look. I guess they knew it was a grift the whole time.
Rudy was even there.
The whole thing, and I'm being too hard on his intellect that he just knows it's all nonsense and he's just collecting the money. So he's just a bad guy and corrupt, but not stupid. Powell is crazy. I mean, and Wood, maybe he's a sleeper agent, but Powell is genuinely crazy. She's lost her cotton picking mind. I mean, honestly, they could have just done a Bush v. Gore type argument that they're finally sort of circled back to now at the Supreme Court, and just said these court decisions changed the rules, and therefore I should win. Build up your argument to it, but it doesn't work. But at least it's not completely insane. But when they started talking about the voting machines and Dominion and Smartmatic and all this and Hugo Chavez,
yes,
I mean that's when a lot of people were like, okay, maybe we shouldn't pay attention to this anymore.
And a lot of lawyers who agreed to handle the first couple stages of these various suits have since declined to be involved in the latter stages and the appeals, and that's kind of pretty clear that these are people saying, I got work to do after this. I can't be involved with this. This person's nuts.
Look, they had real lawyers, real election lawyers in Jones Day and the Pittsburgh firm, and they probably had real lawyers in Arizona at one point and whatnot. I mean, and when I say real lawyers, that doesn't mean they're good people or that their arguments were meritorious, but they knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And they were actually trying to win cases, not just raise money.
Yeah.
But it turned into what it is, and now it's just Trump yelling in the wind, and I guess the one thing that is left to be worried about, at least as a legal matter, well, it's not legal, but it's related matter, is will there be a lot of violence on January 6th, spurred by Trump with the Proud Boys and whatnot? And I'm assuming Congress will have incredibly beefed up security on January 6th. Be shocked if they didn't, because, it's not going to be 1 million people. It might be 100,000 people, and they're going to say it's 1 million people. But, a lot of those people are violent.
Yeah, true. They lost their hotel reservations. But,
at the Harrington, I saw that. Well, I don't think they had the Trump hotel.
That I don't know. I mean, you would think that they would be comped there or something, but
no.
Yeah, they don't want they don't want this is like
Trump
they don't want these dirt bags. That's true. That's probably not the case. I think the only time they ever comped anybody anything was at the casinos, and those failed. So
yes, they did. Those failed. Oh, that always reminds me. Oh, look, he's at the golf course again.
Yes, right. I think it's 5 days in a row. All the people who are counting are up on that.
He's going to go until he flies to Georgia. In fact, he'll probably try to get around in early on January 4th.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine so. I think he was out before light one of those days, which is amazing. As early as I've ever seen him up for anything. But, yeah, he'll probably try and play golf beforehand. And that'll be interesting if he's cranky and tired when it comes rally time, too. Then it could be a real wild card, and he might I understand he also spent the morning today. He's called on Brian Kemp to resign.
Oh, again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, I am alerted that he also tweeted some conspiracy theory yesterday that encompassed Brian. Is it Brian Raffensperger?
His brother.
Yeah,
his brother. Yes.
Yeah. And did you know his brother works for China? And he made it around the world 100 times before anybody said Raffensperger doesn't have a brother at all. And apparently, in trying to track down like what could that even have been that he was talking about, let's see, people came up with all sorts of various excuses, but I think they may basically have come down to, I found a guy in a phone book who had the same last name, and I just turned him into his brother. And P.S. I said he works for China as well, and maybe he doesn't, and they're not related, and I don't know. It's really what can I tell you? He's crazy. Trump doesn't care about being right or honest, factual about anything, and so who knows what he goes and does in this rally. And he's going to go there and he's going to say, vote for Loeffler and Perdue, but not for Kemp and Raffensperger, even though they're not being, they're not on the ballot today. But next time you get a chance, while I'm on the golf course, you do the hard work of getting rid of these two somehow. I don't know. Well, anyway.
Well, no, I just looked at his thing, and he did one of those Team Trump text things. State legislatures have to do it. None of them are in session.
Yeah.
It's not going to be in session, and they can't do it anyway. I mean, you can't. A state legislature can't wait to see how the election turns out. And I don't like the result, therefore I'm choosing the elect. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, right. I suppose they could do whatever they want, but a non-crazy judge would never accept it. You said that the manner of selecting would be to have a popular election. You had it. And I know you're claiming it didn't go well, but you have to, at a minimum, you have to prove that it was somehow invalid, and I've given you every opportunity to do that, and you won't. So what can I do? And then, of course, Trump, the last couple of days has been interesting to watch him skip logical steps, as he frequently does in his thinking, but saying things like, there's lots of fraud in Pennsylvania, therefore I win Pennsylvania, which is also, he and his followers can kind of follow that logic. But, if you were right, which he's not, that there was a lot of fraud in the Pennsylvania vote, the remedy isn't, Biden won, allegedly, but because there's fraud, we'll just, there's only one other choice. It must mean Biden didn't win, so therefore Trump did. Well, you still have to show, did Trump get more votes than Biden that you would consider legitimate? Because you've skipped that part.
The first time he told that Pennsylvania story, he said 205,000 more voters, votes than voters, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that was wrong. And not even what the crazy Pennsylvania legislatures were saying. Because, in fact, there's nearly 9 million registered voters in Pennsylvania, and about 6.9 million of those voted. So there was less votes than registered voters. But, it's the crazy, look at this time of day how many votes there were. It's just the same ridiculous nonsense. But, we're probably going to relive it in Georgia as well, because once the mail ballots start getting counted, and again, Georgia processes them, but they don't get calculated and tabulated until after the election day votes. So they come in after.
Sure.
So the results are going to change, and all that
happen
stuff.
Again.
Yeah, it's going to be the red mirage thing again.
Yes,
and
blue shift is one guy.
And when it happens, this is why Trump wants them to lose, by the way, in my opinion. Because when it happens again, he gets to say, I told you it's all fraud. It's I can't see how he wants them to win. It discredits his whole argument.
Well, yes, that's true. Although I don't know if he cares. I think he would say, all right, I'll take the win. But sir, doesn't that discredit your argument? What the hell do I care? I haven't been in the office in 2 weeks, and I quit next week.
How's it a win for him, though? I mean, I
I
don't see how it's a win for him. I don't think he
It's
cares
not,
if
but-
Mitch McConnell controls the Senate.
I
He
guess
only
that's
cares
true,
about
too.
himself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to have a party over it. But, yeah, no, I mean, I guess if he's got a motivation anywhere, I suppose the motivation probably would be, I hope they lose so I can go around saying I'm right. That'll give me something to talk about. Whereas if I win, like, okay, on a policy level, that might be good because things I prefer will happen in the Senate. But what do I care? Because after I'm not president, I don't give a crap about anything. I don't care who's president and what's happening. I reserve the right to tweet angrily about it and maybe run for president again. But it won't be, 2024 isn't going to be him spending the time between 2021 and 2024 scrutinizing the policy outcomes of the Biden administration to offer a nuanced difference in 2024. He's just going to say everything he did is crap.
Well, you're right. You're right. I'm putting too much on it, but I do think even he understands the optics of them winning Georgia when he lost it with the same governor, the same Secretary of State, the same system.
Although I guess then he can say it was rigged against me. Kemp is anti-Trump. That's the real problem. I mean, I don't know. Okay. I guess he could turn it into anything.
That would be his best argument, right? Okay, so that's actually maybe what he goes with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I do think you're right in that he would probably have more fun with a Republican loss in Georgia and say, I told you. And he could raise more outrage and therefore money that way.
Right. I just think it's a lot better play for him.
Yeah.
If they lose, because then he says, I told you.
I like the outcome.
And they didn't listen to me. And
Write that up as a proposal. Let's say we'll take a proposal to him. Mr. Trump, I think you can make much more money with a Republican loss in both seats in Georgia. It's fabulously lucrative for you. You got to pitch it that way when you go there on the 4th.
All right. By the way, something just came up about our previous discussion. Just something came across the transom.
Yes.
Josh Hawley announced he will object. I told people that was going to happen. And Ron Johnson will too. And whoever...
on the 6th. Okay.
Cotton will do it as well. I think Ted Cruz probably going to have to jump on the bandwagon.
Me too.
Marco Rubio probably should do it.
He should. They'll elbow him so hard too. Get down.
But what's interesting, of course, is given Mike Pence's plenary power, according to Louis Gohmert, he can just rule your objection out of order and we move on.
Yeah. Right. That's true. I didn't think this was possible, but I just read your lawsuit. And you know what? I agree. You're out of order. This objection is out of order. But it's signed by a senator. Who cares? I'm not around, I don't care what it says. I don't care who signed it. I'm not recognizing it. Plenary.
Right. Anyway, you knew and we knew, I think, and Rand Paul, there's many candidates for the Senate signing the objection.
Hawley's the latest. Okay.
Now what's going to be interesting is at this point, now that he's made the announcement, others will join him. What does McConnell do about that?
He says, "Don't."
So do whatever you want.
Don't
right?
stop.
At this point, he says, "All right, you guys who need to protect yourself. Look, I think we know that. First of all, it doesn't matter if the Senate accepts the certifications or not. If the House, which will, then that's it. There's nothing more to be done. But I think it's pretty clear the Senate probably won't either. Not even the fake establishment Grassley types. I mean, Romney's not going to do it. Murkowski's not going to do it. Collins at this point just won. She's not going to do it. And that's it. It's 51 and it's over.
Yeah.
But it'd be fun if it's 50-50 though. And, but there aren't 100, so there won't be a tie, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's true. And let's see, which one of it that won't... Yeah, Purdue can't be there.
Right, he's out.
So that's going to be interesting. Loeffler, I guess, is entitled to be there because she's in a special... she's a replacement.
Yeah, she's finishing a term.
So she stays in until the new senator for that seat is sworn in, whether it's her or not.
It doesn't matter for her. She should just go ahead and announce it and do whatever she wants.
Yeah, okay.
Because whether she wins or loses, she says everything's on the table. That's how she's been punting on it.
Right. I don't know what you mean. Is what that is.
Everything's on the table.
I can't answer that. Sure. All right. So that's interesting. Yeah. So they can't get a 50. So they'll be down one Republican vote.
Yeah, it's 51-48 on that date.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, root for COVID, I guess.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many are going to go do it, but it's an indelible stain forever, in my opinion. But
all right, see. Yeah, we'll see whether it matters. I mean, Hawley,
Hawley, he wants to run for president. He wants to inherit Trump's thing. But of course, the funny thing is, the minute Trump Jr. says I'm running for president, all of Hawley's efforts will be for no reason. Maybe,
yeah, I guess so. Well, that's a good reason I like to pitch to people like Hawley. You should do a quickie impeachment. I mean, Junior won't have been impeached, but if you're worried about having a Trump in the field or having Trump himself anyway in the field.
You mean if you're a Republican?
Yeah.
I said, listen, we're going to clear the field for you.
Right. Impeach and remove Trump and bar him from future government service. Ivanka, I guess, is arguably a government official. You impeach her too. What the hell?
Sure. I think she's impeachable. Jared definitely is.
Yeah.
But
go ahead and impeach Junior too, and claim that your power to do so is plenary.
Exactly. What the heck? We're just doing
Leave
it.
Leave Eric alone. I don't know, but of course, there's every chance. I assume that if they did that, that Donald Trump would say, "I'm not barred from government service. That's stupid. That's not real." And he would run anyway, and then he'd sue states that wouldn't put him on the primary ballot. So.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the world they're living in. Because look, at least me, and I don't know if anybody else is surprised. I was very confident that one of these Republicans, I thought it'd be Cotton or Paul or one of them.
Yeah. Johnson said he would do it early on too.
Well, and then he sort of backed off.
Oh, did he? Okay.
McConnell sort of intimidated him. But now he's pissed because he said, well, listen, if Hawley gets to do it, I get to do it too.
Yeah. Right. And, we'll see what kind of power. And this would be interesting, too. Maybe they're calculating McConnell's power to punish us is also very much dependent on the outcome in Georgia. And if it looks like we're not going to pull it out in Georgia, maybe I can make a big presidential play and McConnell can't hurt me.
Right. The other thing is, the other guy was Tuberville had already said he'd do it.
Oh, yes, right, yeah. Oh, I forgot about him. I should have.
Everyone wants to forget about him.
Yeah, a football coach wants to do it. I forgot about him, even though he came up over the weekend as when I saw, I don't know, one of the newspapers saying.
About Ossoff being inexperienced?
Yes, right. And I said, the next door state just elected a football coach. What are you talking about? He has a thin resume.
It was insane.
I mean, he does.
I mean, everyone knows what I think of the New York Times. So
sure.
I'll leave it at that.
All right.
All right. Anyway, I'm out of things.
Okay. I'm out of time almost. But I'll see what we can cram in there. I think look, I think we've given everybody as much of a preview of this thing and how it could go as is possible. You can now read all the articles thoroughly and critically. I'll recommend to you later the article I was looking at yesterday. There was a Law Journal article from 2019 that I think very clear-eyed article predicting almost exactly how all of this stuff would happen and predicting the whole fake slate of electors thing in the fall issue of the 2019 Law Journal, which means that this was something that he was working on probably in late 2018, and he had it down to the state, Pennsylvania. So
yeah, no, it was a very good article.
Nicely done. Good explanation of everything. And except that all of the late developments in his scenario kind of not applicable this time because no state legislature has endorsed the idea of these second fake slates. The best that they have is a few rogue legislators signing a petition saying we are state legislators and we like this idea, which is, of course, not the same thing as a resolution of the state legislature. But
right. I mean, it's obviously a state legislature is a body. It's not individuals. And it's like a board of directors. I've done this thing before. This example. Just because you're on the board of directors doesn't mean you speak for the board of directors.
Yeah, right.
The board itself has to adopt a resolution. One director can't do it. So it's the same thing with legislatures. A legislature saying this is my slate of electors means nothing.
Yes. Here's another thing I'll throw in there, since we were talking about Pence and his powers and what they could get him to do. Interesting point made here by Adam Gentleson on Twitter, former deputy chief of staff to Harry Reid, who says, we're going to merge two or three of our topics here. If Trump wants the checks so badly, the $2,000 checks, he should, right. Well, but if he did, which he might, who knows? If Trump wants a check so bad, he should ask Pence to preside for the next couple of days over the proceedings in the Senate. And, of course, under Senate rules, floor recognition is up to the person in the chair, and Pence can displace anybody by showing up and take the chair. And he can, if Trump wanted to pass the $2,000 checks. I guess he's using as evidence Trump's tweet 2 hours ago, simply reading $2,000 ASAP, which actually is how much he wants people to pay him.
Exactly.
But, so the idea would be, based on actually that other weird, not quite exactly right article that was circulating that said that come January 21st, Kamala Harris could take the chair in the Senate and recognize anybody she wanted. The idea would be send Pence to the Senate and don't recognize McConnell for his maneuvering. Instead, recognize a $2,000 check vote friendly senator to propose that be the next order of business and hold a vote on that. Except, as you point out, Trump doesn't really care. So
he obviously cares not a whit about anybody or anything except himself.
But there would be the plenary power to that the Senate president does have. Go sit in the chair and recognize whoever you want.
Right.
But he's skiing, so he won't. I mean, I don't know. Is he back?
Yeah, he's still in Vail. He doesn't come back until after the new year.
Well, then, man, what a schedule. Okay, so that's not...
Yeah, he comes back, he presides, and then he's going on a whirlwind foreign tour for a week.
Yeah, just come back a little early.
Getting the last of the perks in before it all ends.
Yeah, well, everybody's doing that. Apparently, they are... all the cabinet department heads, the secretaries are doing that and touring things and taking government planes everywhere. I understand the Interior Secretary screwed things up and brought a bunch of people for a private tour to the Washington Monument, and they had COVID, and they had to close the Washington Monument.
Oh,
So good job. Yeah. You took away the Washington Monument.
One thing we didn't talk about was, and we only have 2 minutes, but it just crossed my mind.
Yes.
So there's now one less Republican congressman on January 3rd.
Right.
I don't know if Pelosi is in any difficulty. I don't think she is. But certainly that's one less vote she has to worry about for getting the speaker.
Yes.
Right?
One more defector she can tolerate.
Vote.
Right. I mean, I think that's negligible, but she had. I guess that gives her one more rogue Democrat she can excuse from voting for her and still not lose.
Right. She only needs, I suppose now, would be 212 out of the 222. So I guess 10 could go the other way.
Okay.
I think. Maybe my math's wrong, but I believe it's 222 to 212, and now it's 211.
Okay.
There's an undecided. Well, actually, anyway, another day.
No time to do the math here. Yeah.
I'll exercise my 12th Amendment counting rights.
You're right. Plenary rights to do the math wrong.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, Dave.
Thanks very much,
you for
Armando.
letting me expound.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll be back on the air tomorrow, of course, and clean up the mess of having left everything for that we wanted to talk about today for tomorrow. Let's see. Is there anything else that we can just throw in real quick? We got even the latest vaccine news that I wanted to cover. All right. I mean, I think that's basically it. There's still a lot happening out there. And, one of the items I wanted to bring up about the delay and rollout of the vaccines was, where is this, from Twitter, Lena Wen, doing the math on this thing. If the goal is to reach 80% of Americans vaccinated with 2 doses of COVID vaccine, it'll take 10 years at the current pace that we're moving at. Of course, we were supposed to be vaccinating 3 million people a day. We are vaccinating 1 million a week. We're going to need to get up to 3.5 million a day just to get to our initial goal that was once set for June of 2021. Not looking real good. I'll be right back after this.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Right back, but only to say this. West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is up next. Justice Putnam will bring you the news from around the country and around the world. The UK has approved that AstraZeneca vaccine, so that's good news too. Maybe we can get some more vaccinations done after all. And now a tour around the federal courts and international arms dealerships as well.